Hello everyone. The aim of this video today was to talk about what I have on my mix bus. So me personally, I do have loads of things in terms of metering, and that's really what I want to speak about. Sometimes I see people with like huge amounts of stuff on their mix bus, like EQs, compressors, saturators, multi-band things, and they're using all of that to get their tune right. And I used to do all that stuff, totally I did, and I found that it was pretty cool, but you end up kind of sometimes going in this loop of you having to edit stuff in the tune because it's hitting a master bus thing weird. And so the further and further I've got along, the more I've realized that I personally like a really clean mix bus and barely anything on it. Sometimes I'll use a little bit of a compressor, and particularly if I'm working on tracks like something I've recorded in the studio, like a rock band, and it's very dynamic, you do need a mix bus compressor. So what I want to caveat this by saying is I'm speaking now about my electronic music that I make in Ableton, which is predominantly without vocals. So it's just instrumental music that I've made electronically. But if I was working with a vocalist and with real drums and mixing in Pro Tools, my approach would be totally different. So I just wanted to say that at the beginning. For electronic music, for drum and bass, and for me as an artist, I really like a clean mix bus. So I'll probably only just have one limiter on my mix bus, and I set this up so that I'm aiming for a loudness of about -9 LUFS. I've found that that's a really sweet spot. That's not too loud where it feels like I'm absolutely crushing the tune, but it's loud enough that it's kind of competitive. Most drum and bass, I would say, is a little bit louder than that. People are aiming for higher, like, -7 LUFS, even -6 LUFS, so it can get really loud. But I like the transients and more dynamics in the music. I do have oversampling on, but I'll try that on and off as well to see what my favourite sound is for the music. I do like the sound of this modern mode, but I also might switch between all-round, punchy, transparent, dynamic, and just see which one works for each different tune if there is some limiting happening. But I like to get it so that there's barely any limiting happening in my tunes, But yeah, that's kind of the main processing that I'll have on my mix bus, is just a limiter, and the aim is for the limiter only to either just add a couple of dB of gain and just do maybe 2 or 3 dB of gain reduction at the most. I want to get things right in the tune first and not have my mix bus trying to fix everything that I've done wrong. I'll go back and fix the actual thing. It took me years to learn. So I'm not talking about this from like, oh yeah, I've done this forever. Nope, I've been there with 45 EQs on my mix bus, 4 compressors, multi-band, gates on the mix bus, and I've found over the years the best sound that I've got is when I just have a limiter doing very little work and get it right at the beginning. That's not going to be right for everyone. There's all different schools of thought, and like I said, if I was mixing rock, pop, live instruments, live vocals and all that sort of thing, my approach would be totally different. I definitely would have a mix bus compressor, something like a G-Bus, or I'd use something like the Neve 33609, whatever I had to hand I'd use on the console. So that's what I'd do in that situation. But I do have ready to go a clipper. I will just every now and again absolutely crush a tune. So I'll give you an example of that with a quick demo tune. This wouldn't be on the whole time. This would be bypassed most of the time, but every now and again to check my mix and crush the tune. So this is without, it's just a tune from a while back. But I'll put a clipper on. And you can see, because this is a mastered tune, it holds up really well to being crushed because the mastering engineer did a really good job. But on your final mix, when you're listening to a tune that you haven't finished yet, if you crush really hard into a limiter just for a couple of moments and see if anything causes the clipper to really crap out and go wrong, you can go back and address that thing. So I have that clipper there just to toggle on and off and really crush my tune. I'm talking super crush it. See what goes wrong. Maybe I'll just adjust that thing a tiny bit. It's normally that like the low mids have got too much and a pad comes in and it all starts to crush everything. So I'll just gently control that. I don't make big changes based on that test. I just quickly look at it to see what's up, and that's it for processing. Then after that, I just have all my metering. Check out mattchapmanaudio.com for mixing and mastering, one-to-one music production blogs, and exclusive content in the store. So I wanted to show you this here. The first thing I have is a BX control. This is free from Brainworks, and I don't use any of the actual processing. I don't use the mono maker or the width at all. Just leave that standard. In fact, you can even turn those off if you need. But what I do use is these meters here. So if I need to check the mids and the sides of the tune, I can check those straight away just at the click of a button. I want to hear how it sounds in mono. to hear the sides. So you can see in this particular tune, I made the choice not to put any of the main breaks in the sides, but just have them completely mono for power and have the percussion out wide and sounding big. So that was just a choice I made for this tune, but that helps me to analyze other tunes and my tune and see what's up. I'd really recommend having that on your mix bus so that every now and again you can check your mix in mono, make sure you don't have problems with phase, and you can check the sides, make sure that you've got what you want in the sides. It's just good to be able to check. Next up is the linear multiband phase from Waves. My pal told me about this and I always remember him telling me and being like, oh yeah, that's a great tip. It's never doing any compression, it's all bypassed, but we found that this is one of the cleanest multiband crossover points, and you can just solo your sub, low mids, high mids, and then do both of those together for the tops, and it gives you a really clean understanding of what's going on with your tune. So if I just want to listen to the low really quick, or low mids, and it just gives me the opportunity to be able to solo different parts of my tune straight away, see if there's any problems in those areas, clean things up as I go. My next one is metric AB. And these are some of the tunes that I use to reference against to see if my mix is sounding about right. One thing that I love about this is now I can press match. Sleepnet's tune is going to be a little bit louder than mine, that's no problem, but it matches volume wise and brings this one down. So when I press AB to hear their tune and hear back my tune, I can do that instant switch between the two, and it gives me a bit more of an insight of, that's what you need to do to improve your tune. So that's what I've been doing for referencing. Then we've got span, which is my next meter, and this one I've set up a few different curves. I just found that this is where I want my stuff to be. So this is in span plus. I've set up some lines in the spectrum window. I'll put this up so you can see, and in the static window so you can see. So you can pause that there and you can borrow my settings if you want. But the main things that are important is that the smoothing is on 1/3 octave and the slope is on 3 dB. And that's what makes pink noise look flat. And then I've used some pink noise for the top level, some pink noise for the highest midpoint, and a brown noise curve. You can go in and load those curves in. So you can just load in a predefined curve of pink noise and you can just adjust that to the level that you want. Yeah, I use that one quite a lot, but not as much as this one. This is my main meter now. And this is the Vision 4X from Excite Audio and Noisier. And what we've got here is a few different types of analyzer. So one for checking stereo width, we can see a waveform readout, which I really appreciate. A spectral analysis curve for drum and bass, which I use a lot. You kind of want to be in between these two lines here with all your frequencies. So if something's a bit quiet or a bit higher, you can just look into why. And then also a heat map. That's one of my favorites at the moment for checking out material. And then finally, this is a really interesting plugin. I use this to check, have I got enough dynamic range in my tune. So you can see with this image here, there are moments where we get into the yellow, which is ideal. And if your tune can be in the yellow and orange, that's where the things are really nice. But you can see when my bass comes in, my tune just gets a little bit too crushed. And that's no problem of the master. That's from where I mixed it. I wanted this kind of warm, crush bass to come in. So that was on purpose. I try and nowadays match these guide rails here, where if the mix is just in yellow and orange most of the time and a little bit green, that's where my sweet spot is. Maybe if I go back to the intro, for instance. We can see we've got pretty cool dynamics there, and that's kind of what I'd be aiming for more nowadays, is a dynamic that's a little bit closer to this. So they're my plugins that I'm using on my mix bus, or sorry, my analyzers that I'm using, and that's how I'm approaching it at the moment. But I might change my mind next week, you never know. And I just wanted to share that with you all. If you've got any questions, you can drop me a comment. I'm happy to answer them. I like a good meter to be able to check and see what's going on. But one thing I wanted to say to finish up is try not to mix with your eyes. Try to let your ears do the work. I think a good blend of both. Ears first, eyes second would be my advice. So anyway, I hope that helps, and thank you for watching. Until next time, nice one.